Hey there. So I haven't done one of these in a while, but today is my 1 year anniversary with Beachbody, and it's also Transformation Tuesday. So I thought that I would use this as an opportunity to kind of explain my why I decided to be a coach for Beachbody and go down this road towards being healthy. Um, So those of you who know me know I've never been overweight. I don't have this inspiring weight loss story for people. I'm really petite. I'm 4'10". I think the largest I've ever been is a size 4. Um, so I've never been overweight, but I've never really been healthy either. Um, the earliest memory I have of really realizing that people notice what you look like and they feel entitled enough to comment on it, I was probably like 8 or 10 years old. And I was in dance class, and my dance teacher's daughters, who were teenagers at the time, would always kind of come in and help out. And one of them had made a comment that you could see my training bra through my god awful pink leotard. And one of the other daughters had felt the need to take this a step further and say that it was because I had gained weight, so my leotard was stretched tighter than it was supposed to be, and that's why it was see-through. Again, I was like 8 or 10 years old at the time, so I was round. I had, my baby fat like everybody does at that age, and I heard what they said, and I was kind of taken aback by it, but at the same time, I was so young that I didn't really know what it meant at that point, and I just kind of went about my life. Um, and then junior high happened, and boys are really, really mean in junior high. And you're, 11, 12 years old. You're soft, like you don't have a lot of muscle tone. And we were at recess one day, and we were playing like Red Rover or some kind of running game like that. And there were some boys sitting on the bench in the park, and they were watching us, and one of them had commented how my thighs jiggled when I ran, and they all started chanting "Crave the Wave." Um, and I never ran during recess again. And I had kind of taken that, and it was hurtful, I was at that point old enough where, especially a boy's comment on how I looked, really affected me. So I kind of stopped eating a lot at that point. I was more aware of the things that I was eating and the activities I was doing and how I looked. Um, and this continued throughout junior high, and towards like 8th grade, towards the end of 8th grade, maybe, it was around the time that like Britney Spears came out and she was really popular. And I had seen an interview where she said she did 500 crunches a day, and she had a flat stomach, and I wanted a flat stomach, so I was going to do 500 crunches a day. And at the time, I was sharing a room with my brother, and we had bunk beds. So I would wake up really early in the morning, and I would climb down from the bunk bed really quietly and really steadily, even though he could sleep through a natural disaster at that point. Um, and I would do my 500 crunches, and I would do 500 jumping jacks, and I would basically do any other kind of exercise I can do in my tiny little room without waking up my brother or anyone else in the house. Um, and I did this every day for the whole summer after 8th grade. And towards the end of the summer, I woke up and I did this routine, and I showered. And I went into the kitchen, and my mom was ironing this really, really ugly plaid skirt that I wanted to wear that day. And she was talking to me, and I remember looking down at the skirt, and the lines like on the plaid all got really blurry. And then everything kind of got white and foggy. And then the next thing I remember, I hear my brother screaming for someone to call an ambulance and slapping me across the face, which I'm sure he loved at that point. But basically, I had passed out. I hit my head on the kitchen counter on the way down. They called an ambulance. Paramedics came. We went to the hospital. They gave me IV fluids, chalked it up to dehydration. No one was the wiser. So did not scare me, didn't faze me at all. Kept going down the road I was going. Got to high school, kind of kept going the road I was going. Freshman, sophomore year of high school, I was pretty normal. They picked up really quickly when we would go out to eat and I wouldn't eat. My friends they picked up on it. They made comments about it. So I kind of just went with the flow and faked it. I also took this time to discover very creative ways to make myself throw up without people noticing. So that kind of countered the now having to eat part. When I was 16, someone very, very close to me passed away, and I did not handle it well. I don't handle loss well at all. So my mom had made me go talk to the school therapist, and I spoke to her a few times about that, and then she had kind of seen that there was something deeper going on. So I started meeting with her on a regular basis. And after probably about a month or so, or probably a little more than that actually, she had diagnosed me with something called body dysmorphic disorder. And the best way I've ever figured out how to describe this to someone is that it's like seeing yourself through a funhouse mirror. One of those ones that kind of makes you look like an Oompa Loompa. It is a painful, debilitating awareness of every dimple, every jiggle, every roll, every bulge, whether it's actually there or not, and in most cases it's not. But that's basically what it is. I am probably the only person in my high school who had a fake ID and never ever used it to buy alcohol or get into a club. But I knew which stores I could get the really good diet pills at that would keep it behind the counter, that you had to be 18 or older to get them. This was also the time when those Stacker pills kind of came out. It was basically legal speed Stackers. I don't know if you've ever taken them. And apparently if you take enough, you can stay up for 3 days straight and do nothing but throw up. And it's really, really not fun. So that was high school for me. It was an endless seesaw of eating and kind of being okay, and then not eating and buying diet pills, and kind of not ODing, but kind of binging on diet pills until I was making myself sick, and then I would get scared and stop and go back to normal, and it was just back and forth for the whole 4 years. College came, and I had a really great group of friends my freshman year of college. We spent a lot of time in the cafeteria. We were in college in the city. We would go out to Serendipity all the time and get dessert. And like 99% of people do their freshman year of college, I gained about 10 pounds or so. And I freaked the fuck out. Excuse my language. I started working at that time, and I don't know if it was just between my own issues with that and working full-time and being in school full-time, but around the time I was like 19 or 20, I started having really bad anxiety attacks. And I went to my doctor and they put me on Paxil, and it was the best diet pill I had ever taken in my entire life. I had lost maybe like 20 pounds. I was probably down to about 80 pounds at that point. But I was a zombie. I would have a conversation with you, and 5 minutes later I would forget it, if I even made it that long. Sometimes I would forget what we were talking about in the middle of our conversation. So I had decided to kind of wean myself off of it and give myself a chance to get away. So I had gone to see my friend in Minnesota for 10 days, and I don't even think she knew I was on them at the time, or that this was what I was doing at the time, but I had used those 10 days to kind of give myself a break and sort things out in my head, because I was never a fan of going to therapy. I'm not this is really uncomfortable for me right now. I'm not one to open up to strangers. I like to deal with things myself. So that's what I did, and I kind of weaned myself off of it. Went back home, went on with my life, started dating someone, and got sick again. And it wasn't a full-time kind of sickness. It was kind of like I would eat too much and I would feel really guilty, so I would make myself throw up. And he had caught on, and he had threatened to leave me if I did it again. And he convinced me to go talk to a therapist. but I was still covered under my parents' insurance at that time, and I didn't want any kind of trail, so I would only see the therapist in my school. It was still confidential. They were paid through the school. There was no insurance trail. It was totally safe for me. So I did that. And when I was like 21 or so, I started getting really sick, not on purpose. I was just throwing up all the time. My glands were always swollen. I went to an ENT. I ended up having to get my tonsils taken out. They were so acid eroded from making myself throw up for so long that they were actually making me sick at this point. I couldn't stop throwing up if I wanted to. So that was kind of college, and then I was pretty much okay-ish after that. I was managing. I was able to, do things in public for the most part. It started getting really bad probably later in my 20s. I was not able to eat by myself in public. I would have an anxiety attack. I was not able to be the only person at the table with food in front of me. I couldn't go grocery shopping by myself. I think the first time I did this, I was 27 years old. I was living in Texas by myself. I had no choice but to go alone. And I thought it would be a really smart idea to do it at the Super Walmart because it wasn't a real grocery store and there was other stuff I could throw in my cart and no one would notice that I was there for food. And I made it to aisle 3 before I had a full-fledged anxiety attack and ran out of the store crying and shaking and sat in my car for a good maybe 15-20 minutes in the parking lot before I was stable enough to drive home. And I just didn't eat that week. I ate the food that was already in the house I was staying at, which was basically like canned soup and pastaroni and shit like that. I still kind of struggle with those things. It's really, really hard. I just have gotten really good at faking it. But about a little over a year ago, I had seen an infomercial for T25 and I had downloaded it illegally. I'm sorry, Shanti. I love you. You have all my money now. I'm more than made up for it. Trust me. And I had done that and it kind of got me excited. I didn't think I could do it. I never, other than doing like obsessive crunches, I had never really worked out ever. And I started seeing these changes in my body and it made me really excited and I felt really strong for the first time in a really long time. And I started posting about what I was doing on Facebook, and a friend of mine who's a Beachbody coach kind of convinced me to sign up as a coach. And the way it kind of works is you have an option. You can kind of like pay a sign-up fee or you can purchase a program. So I purchased the 21-Day Fix, which is a program all about, choosing the right foods and learning portion control and all of that. And I am not in any way exaggerating when I say that this program and the people I have met through Beachbody have saved my life. It makes it easier to eat alone in public when you're eating the right kind of food and not like a slice of pizza. And this program kind of taught me how to do that. And the people that I met, I haven't actually met most of them in person. I maybe met like 24 or so of them tops once in the past year. And these people, without having met me, without having heard this story, because this is the first time I'm sharing it, they accepted me. And they knew that there was a story there, and I wasn't forced to share it, but they knew that it was there. And they knew that I was flawed, and that was okay. And I've never in my life met a group of people who are so supporting and so encouraging and so accepting of someone in all of their hot messiness, or whatever you want to call it. And there's no judgment, and they don't pry and they don't ask questions. And when you're willing to share, you can share. And if you're not willing to share, that's it. It's okay. We're here for you. And that's just kind of the whole vibe of Beachbody, and it's such a great community to be a part of, and I'm so thankful that I found them. And it's still, there's no cure for something like this. It's kind of like a remission. It can come back at any time. Um, and it's a struggle every day. I have to sometimes remind myself that, not everybody that walks past me is noticing what I'm eating. They're not looking at what's in my shopping cart. They don't give a shit about what food I'm buying. They're more concerned about what food they're buying. Um, they just, being a part of this family kind of just makes it a lot easier. Um, yeah. So that's my why, and I'm over my 10 minutes, so I am stopping now, and I'm sorry I rambled, but I hope it was helpful to somebody.